नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणी निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna. We start with Mangalacharana prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaidam Savadutam Parajana Sakitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our weekly study of Bhagavad-gita. Sorry, we got a little delayed and we are getting started we're continuing to read from the 4th chapter entitled as Jnana Yoga or Transcendental Knowledge. So we read up to verse 20 last week. So I'll just read the translation of verse 20. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. So we are continuing to read from verse 21. So you will read verse 21. Nirasiryata chittatma tyaktva sarva parigraha Sariram kevalam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Word by word meaning. Nirasihi, without desire for the result. Yata, controlled. Chitta atma, mind and intelligence. Tyakta, giving up. Sarva, all. Parigraha, sense of proprietorship over possessions. Shariram, in keeping body and soul together. Kevalam, only. Karma, work. Kurvan, doing. Na, never. Apnoti, does acquire. Kilbisham, sinful reaction. Translation and purport. by His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reaction. So this is, Krishna is continuing. He is describing a person, one who acts on the platform of jnana. He is working, he is doing his activities, but with the proper understanding. What is the proper understanding? Right? The verse before verse, right? In 19, he is describing that one who is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by the sages to be a worker, for whom the reactions of work have been burnt up by the fire of perfect knowledge. And even before that, he says, right, one who sees inaction and action, and action in inaction, is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sort of activities. So this is the key Krishna is describing. One who sees inaction and action, and action in inaction. Right? So inaction means there are two meanings. Right? One is not doing activity. Right? Another is doing activity for which there is no karmic reaction. Right? So here, one who sees inaction and action means even though one might be doing all kind of activity, for him there is no reaction. So that is called akarma. Right? Akarma means when we do activity for which there is no reaction. So one who sees inaction and action. So, here we should think, we should not get confused. Seeing inaction and action means even though he might be doing all kind of activities, if for those activities there is no reaction, those activities are called as good as inaction, means for which there is no reaction. And then action in inaction, even though one might be not doing any activity, but still there is a karmic reaction. Inaction means here inactivity, right? He is not doing any activity, but still he is incurring karma. How is it possible? So this two subtlety one has to understand. One is doing activity, but still there is no reaction. That is called inaction. And then I am not doing any activity, but still there is a reaction. So that inaction is called action, because there is karmic reaction. So we understood the first part of it, right? When we perform activities and when we do those activities on the spiritual platform, when we do everything as an offering unto the Supreme, the activities we do, right? There is no karmic reaction. Neither punya nor papa is coming. But when we don't do our prescribed duty, so thinking that, if I do activity, there will be a karma, even though I might be, renouncing everything artificially. And if I don't do any activity, but still there's a karma for that. One is for not doing the prescribed duty, there will be a reaction. That is because that reaction is coming from my inaction. Second, right? Even though I might be thinking that I am not doing any activity, but still I am doing activity. How? Just by breathing, I am incurring karma. Even though I am not doing anything, but still there is a reaction for my inaction also. So this one who understands the subtlety between these two, he is in transcendental position. That's what Krishna is describing here, right? For such a man of understanding, acts with such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his position, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reaction. Purport: a Krishna conscious person does not expect good or bad results in his activities. Why? Because we are performing everything as an akarma. When we do everything as an offering unto Krishna, Krishna is taking the responsibility for those activities. His mind and intelligence are fully controlled. He knows that because he is part and parcel of the Supreme, the part played by him as a part and parcel of the whole is not his own activity, but is only being done through him by the Supreme. When the hand moves, it does not move out of its own accord, but by the endeavor of the whole body. A Krishna conscious person is always dovetailed with the supreme desire, for he has no desire for personal sense gratification. He moves exactly like a part of a machine. As a machine part requires oiling and cleaning for maintenance, so a Krishna conscious man maintains himself by his work just to remain fit for action in transcendental loving service of the Lord. He is therefore immune to all reactions of his endeavors. Like an animal, he has no proprietorship even over his own body. A cruel proprietor of an animal sometimes kills the animal in his possession. Yet the animal does not protest, nor does it have any real independence. A Krishna conscious person, fully engaged in self-realization, has very little time to falsely possess any material object. For maintaining body and soul, he does not require unfair means of accumulating money. He does not therefore become contaminated by such material sins. He is free from all reactions to his actions. So here Prabhupada is, nicely giving this analogy, how the part of the whole, like example is here, the hand of the body. Hand is moving according to the will of the whole body, not on its own volition. Hence, hand is not held separately accountable for its activity. The whole person is held accountable. Similarly, when we perform according to the will of the Supreme, like how the hand is cooperating with the body, similarly, when we cooperate according to the will of the Supreme, so for the activities we do in the spirit of cooperation with the Supreme, for which there will be no reaction. Here one has to be very careful, One cannot do some prohibited activity and claim that, oh, I am doing it for Krishna. One cannot artificially shift the responsibility to Krishna. Here one has to understand, one should not do activities which are prohibited in the scripture. Even the activities which are recommended, when we do, there will be a reaction. But if I do those recommended activities as an offering unto the Supreme, then for those activities, there will be no reaction. So here one should not misunderstand that on the name of Krishna consciousness, I can do anything and get away. No, that is not recommended here at all. So that needs to be understood very clearly. Even the recommended activities when we do, there will be a positive reaction, called punya. Even those things are binding. Will keep us in this material world, will make us to make repeated birth and death in this world. Even the punya we do, right, to reap those benefit of that punya, we have to take birth again. But when we do the prescribed activities as an offering unto Krishna, those activities becomes akarma, for which there is no reaction. So that is what it is mentioned here. Verse 22. Yadricha labha santushto Dvandvito Vimatsaraha, Dvandvatito Vimastaraha, Samasiddhau, Asiddhau cha, Kritvapina, Nibatyate, Yadricha, out of his own accord, Labha, with gain, Shantushtaga, satisfied, Dvandva, duality, Atitaha, surpassed, Vimatsaraha, free from envy, Samaha, steady, Siddhau in success, Asiddhau, failure, Cha, also, Kritva, doing, Api, although, Na, never, Nibatyate, becomes affected. Translation. He who is satisfied with action which comes of its own, no, he who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled, although performing actions. Here, the quality of a Krishna conscious person is further described. What is one of the qualities of this person? He does not over endeavor for anything. He does his duty for whatever he is supposed to do. So after doing his duty, whatever the results comes at his own accord, he accepts it and uses it in service of Krishna. And then whatever, comes on its own accord, right? He will use that only for his maintenance. He does not over endeavor, right? And he is free from duality, right? He is free from hate and love. He is free from liking and disliking, honor and dishonor. He will do simply what needs to be done. And he does not reject activities, or he is not get attached to something. Because this attachment and detachment comes out of envy only. Because he does not have envy, he is neither attached nor detached. He simply will do his duty as an offering unto the Supreme. And he is steady in both success and failure. When we do our activity, whatever the result comes, he does not get disturbed by the result of that activity, because he knows that everything is happening according to the will of the Supreme. He accepts everything as mercy of Krishna. A Krishna conscious person does not make much endeavor even to maintain his body. He is satisfied with gains which are obtained of their own accord. He neither begs nor borrows, but he labors honestly as far as in his power, is in his power, and is satisfied with whatever is obtained by his own honest labor. He is therefore independent in his livelihood, because he is not over endeavoring. He is not slave to anybody, right? He will do his duty, right? And whatever the results comes its own, he accepts it. He is not attached to the results, hence he does not act, as a slave to somebody. He does not allow anyone's service to hamper his own service in Krishna consciousness. So that means he does not give any excuse for not doing his duty. Oh, that person did it, that's why I'm not doing it. Oh, that person did it, that's why the results are not coming. He does not give any of those excuses. However, for the service of the Lord, he can participate in any kind of action without being disturbed by the duality of the material world, right? How a police officer, in the duty of discharging, right, his duty as a police officer, he does not get disturbed whether he should not get disturbed whether he has to arrest his own relative, right? Because he has to follow the law. Similarly, a person involved in Krishna consciousness, he doesn't have any personal liking or disliking. He keeps it aside. He does it whatever for the service of the Lord. The duality of the material world is felt in terms of heat and cold. or misery and happiness. A Krishna conscious person is above duality because he does not hesitate to act in any way for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, he is steady both in success and in failure. These signs are visible when one is fully in transcendental knowledge. So all these things cannot be artificially done. Someone might be able to artificially, pretend that, oh, I'm doing everything for will of Krishna. I'm neither attached nor detached. But that is not possible to do in a sustainable manner until one is properly situated in transcendental knowledge. When he has proper understanding, what is that understanding? There is supreme proprietor, supreme creator, supreme enjoyer, and supreme controller of everything. I am simply part and parcel of that supreme. My purpose is to serve the whole. When he has that kind of a transcendental knowledge, he does not have any independent desires to gratify his own senses. Because of that, he is free from all the actions and reactions. Verse 23. Gata sangasya muktasya jnana vastita chetashaha yajna yacharata karma samagram praviliyate. Gata sangasya, of one unattached to the modes of material nature, muktasya, of the liberated, jnana avistita, situated in transcendence, chetashaha, whose wisdom, yajnaya, for the sake of yajna, Krishna, acharataha, acting, karma, work, samagram, in total, praviliyate, merges entirely. Translation: the work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. What does it mean? Even though he might be doing activity which is part of this world, because he is properly situated in knowledge, he is doing everything as a service unto Krishna. Even the activity which he has to do to maintain his body, he is doing it for the ability to continue in the service of Krishna. So because he is doing everything as an offering unto the Supreme, he is able to dovetail all his activities in the service of Krishna, for which there is no reaction. That the activity itself becomes spiritual. Even though the activity is part of this material world, that activity is not anymore material. For example, a person might be going to work like anybody else, but he is going to work and using whatever the results comes, the earnings which comes out of the work, he is doing it, he is using it in the service of Krishna. When he does that, right, that even though the material activity going to work, it is not anymore material, it completely gets spiritualized. Purport: becoming fully Krishna conscious. Becoming fully Krishna conscious, one is freed from all dualities and thus is free from the contamination of material modes. He can become liberated because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna, and thus his mind cannot be drawn from Krishna consciousness. Consequently, whatever he does for Krishna, who is the primeval Vishnu. Therefore, all his works are technically sacrifices, because sacrifice aims at satisfying the Supreme Person, Vishnu Krishna. The resultant reaction to all such work certainly merge into transcendence. One does not suffer material effects. See, right? Yajna, the word yajna, right, means sacrifice. Also, yajna means Vishnu, right? Yajna means the activities which is performed to please Lord Vishnu is called yajna, sacrifice. Not other things are not called yajna. We might call various things as yajna. No. Yajna means only one thing. When one performs for the pleasure of Vishnu, that activity is called yajna. Everything else might be ritual or karma. So when a person is doing activities in this world, we know that in this world, everything is part of these three modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamo-guna. All activities in this world are classified into three activities, three categories, or combination of these three categories only. So even though he is doing activities in this material world, normally it can be classified as either one of this or combination, it's one of these three modes. Because he is doing everything as an offering unto the Supreme, he never forgets Krishna. He can never be, his mind can never be withdrawn from Krishna. His mind is always Krishna conscious. In that capacity, when he acts, the activity is not anymore material. There is no more material reaction because the activity itself is spiritual. So that's what here Prabhupada is describing in the purport. Next verse, 24. Brahmarpanam Brahmaghavir Brahmagnau Brahmana Kutam Brahmana Kutam Brahmaviteva Ganatavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. It's a very important verse, to understand in what consciousness one should perform the activity. Brahma, spiritual in nature. Arpanam, contribution. Brahma, the supreme. Havihi, butter. Brahma, spiritual. Agnau, in the fire of consummation. Brahmana, by the spirit soul. Hutam, offered. Brahma, spiritual kingdom. Eva, certainly. Tena, by him. Kantavyam, to be reached. Brahma, spiritual. Karma, in activities. Samadhina, by complete absorption. Translation: a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Purport: how activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of this material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness or for Vishnu only, the more atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma-jyotir, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in the Brahma-jyotir. But when the jyotir is covered by illusion, maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor and the result are all combined together, Brahman or the absolute truth. So here, very nicely, Prabhupada is explaining the technicality behind how one acting in Krishna consciousness get relieved or get liberated from this material world. The activities in this world can be classified into two, either material or spiritual. So the same activity can either become spiritual or material. The only differentiating factor is consciousness in which that activity is performed. So we can't avoid acting in this material world. In this material world, everything is nothing but combination of these three modes. All of them has consequent reaction. So hence, one cannot escape from the activities of this world. The only thing which can be done is the consciousness in which those activities are performed. If this consciousness can be properly dovetailed, that means when the consciousness is situated that I am servant of Krishna, I am doing everything as an offering unto Krishna, when that consciousness is maintained, the same material activity which is normally binding to this material world, which keeps us in the material world by repeated birth and death, the same activity can be liberating. Here, Prabhupada gives the analogy of a person who had overeaten milk products, right? Because of indigestion, he might be going through dysentery, right? But the same, that indigestion can be cured when somebody is having dysentery because of overeating of milk products, that can be cured by simply taking yogurt. Similarly, the activity we do in this material world, that is the one which is binding us in this material world. The same activity can be liberating if we change the consciousness in which we do this activity. So that is the key, sum and substance of this set of verses. The activities are not, completely changed. The activities are not given up, because it's not possible to give up completely all the activities. But the consciousness in which it is performed, if that is properly situated, the activity becomes spiritual. In that situation, right, there is no difference between his body and activity and material things. All of them becomes completely spiritualized. Brahman. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyotir, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyotir. But when Jyotir is covered by illusion, Maya or sense gratification, it is called material. So here only the consciousness, if I do it for my own gratification, it becomes material. If I do it for Krishna's pleasure, then it becomes spiritual. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness, thus offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor and the result are combined together, Brahman or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the supreme absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman or the supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna or sacrifice, for the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the results are ultimate gain. Everything becomes one in the absolute, the supreme Brahman. That method, that is the method of Krishna consciousness. Here, right, it is mentioned everything is ultimately spiritual, right? Because everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is happening because of energies of Krishna. Even including us, we are all Shakti of energy of the Lord. The Lord has many categories of energies, of which predominantly there are three categories it is described. Andaranga Shakti, Bhagiranga Shakti, and Tadasya Shakti. Andaranga Shakti means his spiritual energy. All the activities in the spiritual world, those are all, right? They are carried out by Andaranga Shakti. All the activities in the material world, they are all called Bhagiranga Shakti. And beyond this two, there is third category called marginal energy, Tadashta Shakti, that we are living entity. So the living entity, either it has to be spiritual or material, because we are marginal. We are either this way or that way. If we do those activities for my own sense gratification, that is material. If I do those same activities for the pleasure of Krishna, it becomes spiritual. So this is the secret behind getting liberated from the material world. The activities as such, it cannot be completely renounced. Of course, the prohibited activities should be avoided. The prescribed activities, when we do it in the consciousness that I am part and parcel of Supreme, I am doing this activity as an offering unto the Supreme, that consciousness will liberate us from the reactions of the activities we are performing. So this is the method of Krishna consciousness. So this is very important to understand. Daivam me pare yagyam yogina paryupasate Karmagnav apare yagyam yajne vaiva no juhvati. Daivam, in worshipping the demigods, eva, like this, apare, some others, yagyam, sacrifices, yoginaga, mystics, paryupasate, worship perfectly, Brahma of the absolute truth, agnav, in the fire, apare, others, yajnam, sacrifice, yajnena, by sacrifice, eva, thus, upajupati, offer. Translation. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigod by offering the different sacrifices to them. And some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Purport. As described above, a person engaged in discharging duties in Krishna consciousness is also called a perfect yogi or a first-class mystic. But there are others also who perform similar sacrifices in the worship of demigods, and still others who sacrifice to the Supreme Brahman or the impersonal future of the Supreme Lord. So there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifices. Factually, sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is also known as Yajna. All the different varieties of activities can be placed within two primary divisions, namely sacrifice of the worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possession for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, while others who want some temporary material happiness sacrifice their material possession to satisfy demigods such as Indra, the sun god, etc. And others who are impersonalists sacrifice their identity by merging into the Supreme into the existence of the impersonal Brahman. The demigods are powerful living entities appointed by the Supreme Lord for the maintenance and supervision of all material functions like the heating, watering, and lighting of the universe. Those who are interested in material benefits worship the demigods by various sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals. They are called Bhagishwaravadi. Bhagishwaravadi means believers in many demigods by various sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals. They are called Bhagishwaravadi, or believers in many gods. But others who worship the impersonal future of the absolute truth and regard the form of the demigods as temporary, sacrifice their individual selves in the supreme fire and thus end their individual existence by merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such impersonalists sacrifice their time in philosophical speculation to understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme. In other words, the fruity workers sacrifice their material possession for the material enjoyment, whereas the impersonalists sacrifice his material designation with a view to merge in the existence of the Supreme. For the impersonalist, the fire altar of sacrifice is the Supreme Brahman, and offering is the self being consumed by the fire of Brahman. The Krishna conscious person, like Arjuna, however, sacrifices everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus all his material possession as well as his own self, everything is sacrificed for Krishna. Thus he is the first class yogi, but he does not lose his individual existence. Here, sacrifices of two kinds. One is sacrifices performed for the pleasure of Vishnu, the devotees who do everything as an offering unto the Supreme. So those are actually, factually called sacrifice. The other activities, right, they are also called sacrifice in one sense because they are giving up something. They are sacrificing something. They fall into two categories. What are they? One is sacrificing material possession for the pleasure of various demigods, various rituals. Why they do it? Actually, indeed, they do it to get more, right? When I worship a devata, generally, right, there is an expectation. I am doing this for you, please give me results. I give the milk, you give me the rabdi. I give 1 rupee, and then you give me 1,000 rupees back. They do as a business transaction. Why? Their intention is actually for material enjoyment only. So, and then the other type of activities is they do those activities in the consciousness that everything is Brahman. I am also Brahman. I want to lose my individuality by merging into that Brahman. Right? They are also sacrificing their identity. Right? So that is, those are the one who is actually doing it for merging into Brahman. The others are doing it for material enjoyment. Beyond this is the proper activity of sacrifice, yajna, that is for the pleasure of Vishnu. So that needs to be understood. So that's what it is described here. Normally sacrifice means for the perform pleasure of Vishnu. But others who are doing it for not pleasure of Vishnu, they might be also calling it as sacrifice. Why? They are still giving up something. So they fall into these two categories. That's what Krishna described, and that's what Prabhupada elaborated in this purport. So we will stop here. Any comments? Any questions at this time?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes.
If a person is doing an action in a Krishna consciousness,
Yes.
So it might be get by mercy of Lord, he enters into the spiritual world.
Correct.
So in how can it be measured? Because in material world, by he doing actions in Krishna consciousness, so he can't get any karma or vikarma activities.
Correct.
Then he enters into spiritual world by his God's mercy. So
Yes.
how it can be measured? What position he will get there, or already his position is reserved there? Yeah, or anyhow the soul cannot be inactive, right, Prabhuji, in material world or spiritual world.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So what kind of position he will get in that spiritual world, Prabhu?
Yes, that's a very good question, Gopi Prabhuji. So, as I said, so the activities are of two kind. One is for the pleasure of Vishnu or Krishna. Another is for its own pleasure. Right? So, this activities which is described in this verse, even for merging into the Brahman, or when we give up some position for pleasing some demigods, both of them are factually for one's own self-pleasure only. But when we do activities for the pleasure of Krishna, the activities are called akarma. It burns up all our existing, both papa and punya, and we are completely freed from both positive and negative accounts, papa account and punya account. In that way, by end of life, he gets liberated and he goes back to spiritual world. So, where he will go in spiritual world, what is his position? That depends on the mood in which he worships. In this world also, there is Krishna and his expansions. His expansions are many, right? Narayana, Vishnu, Rama, Narasimha, Vamana, Kurma, right? Balarama, all of them are expansions of Krishna. So if one performs all the activities in a particular mood as an offering into a particular form of Krishna, that mood will take him to that type of destination. Because in spiritual world, there are innumerable planets. If worship Krishna as the supreme creator, proprietor, enjoyer in the position of Narayana or Vishnu, he goes to one of the Vaikuntha planets. In that Vaikuntha planets, the Lord has 4 hands. Even the inhabitants of those Vaikuntha planets, they also have 4 hands. They all look identical to Narayana. The only difference is, right, the Lord Narayana wears Kastuba jewel. And that there is the mark in his chest is there. That is the only difference. Otherwise, they also look all identical to Vishnu, Narayana, and the Vaikuntha Vasis. So if one worships Krishna in the mood of attaining Goloka Vrindavana, he attains Goloka planet. So the mood in which he performs his worship, that will become his destination. His position, whether he goes to Vaikuntha or Goloka, right? Within Vaikuntha also there is like Ayodhya planet is there, Nashinga planet is there, different planets are there. Depending on who is one of his Ishta Devata. If he is get attached to a particular form of Krishna and perform all this duty as an offering into the particular form of Krishna, he attains that spiritual position. So even this material world, when we worship Krishna, right, there are different levels of relationship. There is Dasya, Santa, Dasya, right, Vatsalya and Madhurya, right, servitorship, neutral, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and then conjugal affection. So depending on which in what particular mood one is serving, that will become his destiny. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhu, but the moods are already pre-written, or we have to develop, Prabhu? How?
Yeah, that mood, right? What is our identity in the beginning stage? We will not know because we are covered by our material things, material desires. When we continue to perform bhakti, or akarma, slowly, the coverings, when they are destroyed, our original Swarupa, our original identity will be revealed to us. We don't have to artificially impose ourselves as, this way or that way. In the beginning, we do it only in the mood of dasya, as a servitor. But in that mood of servitorship, when we do in the dasya bhava, whether we are Saka, Sakya, or whether Vatsalya, or whether Madhurya, those will be revealed when we are completely pure. Our Swarupa will be revealed. We don't have to artificially impose ourselves. The only thing is that I am servant, which is common for all the other modes.
Yes, okay. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, Prabhu, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very good question. Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll come to a conclusion. Thank you very much. We'll continue next week from verse 26 onwards. These are very important verses to understand, karma on the platform of jnana. When it is properly performed with this proper knowledge, transcendental knowledge, the karma which is binding in this world, the same karma can be liberating. That is the, the crux of the knowledge Krishna is communicating in this set of verses. The consciousness of the performer is the ultimate determiner of what our destination is. Whether it is a particular thing is a material activity or a spiritual activity, that it depends on the consciousness of the performer. What is the intention in which he is doing? So that important factor, one understands and cultivates proper consciousness, the material activities can be dovetailed, and the same material activity which is normally binding to the material world to repair at birth and death, the same material activity will become liberating. So that is the secret of performing work. Thank you very much. If there's no further question, we'll stop here. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.